My friends, good day. You see why I left Europe. When I left the United Kingdom, in my list of requirements, there was an important feature. It was that the country I was going to had to be at least 10 hours away by plane from Europe, from the United Kingdom in particular, because it's often that country, often the center of many things. In any case, if it's not the center, at the very least it's the follower, and it ends up in situations where it takes the hits, sometimes even in place of others. And so I wanted to go far away. And ideally, I had compromised a little on that point, and I wanted to go to the Emirates. And actually, it was my wife who wanted to go to Mauritius. So we had this debate. She said Mauritius, I said the Emirates. You saw how I was in the Emirates early last year. And actually, what happened is that I thought about it. I told myself there's a universal rule that never fails, which is that a man's happiness depends on his wife's happiness. I mean, if she is, I can argue, counter-argue, insist, all that. And in the end, she could have said, okay, fine, let's go. If it makes you happy, if you really want to go there, we'll go there. I could have gotten that. On the other hand, I would have won. As they say, I would have won, but I would have had to live with her. You see what I mean? You have to be very careful about winning against a woman because you win, okay? But you're going to live with her. So you're going to live with a woman you won against and she feels like she couldn't get what she wanted or what she thought was right for her and her family. It's not an ego battle, as I've been saying all along. It's not an ego battle. It's really a fight that's connected to projects, to values that have to be reflected in projects. Today, I'm actually happy to be here, to be in the southern hemisphere, to be on this island, just living simply. I don't ask anything else from life except to look at the blue sky, watch the clouds, listen to the birds, and see the waves. And honestly, you don't need more when you realize it. I've moved away from materialism more and more. When I say materialism, I mean it in the broad sense of the word. Materialism is a big word. I'll take it back. When I look at consumerist society in Europe, it's true that we're given the impression that there are things we need. We're given that impression. It's not I think, therefore I am. As Descartes said, it's I consume, therefore I am. You see, you exist through consumption. It's your ability to consume that as it's sold to you determines your happiness, even your existence and your social value. In reality, when you step away from all that, you see it's a con game, you see it's a complete scam, that you can absolutely live and even live better without it. Once you get off the treadmill or the hamster wheel, that cage where the poor hamster is running but ends up going nowhere. So running and running just to consume with the money we have, to consume with the money we don't have, with credit, making banks richer, buying Christmas gifts in December with credit cards, then throwing them away in January. You see, all of that, these are traditions that when you look at them from a distance, I mean really from a distance, they don't make any sense at all. All right. Today I watched, like many others, I watch with a lot of concern what's happening in the Middle East. I really feel bad for a lot of people, whoever they are. I feel bad for the poor. The Iranians who are being bombed, they haven't done anything to anyone. They're just living their lives. The kids who are being buried by the JCB, it's clear they didn't do anything to deserve that. I'm pretty horrified by the destabilization of the region, what's happening, for example, in Qatar, in the Emirates. These countries, if you remember, when Trump was elected on the promise of being a man of peace, a promise he largely went back on, like all presidents, by the way, well, he was received like a king over there. They welcomed him with a triumphant reception. He left with a lot of money. Qatar had given him a Boeing 747 for him to use, like Air Force One. So a 747-9, actually American made, but the White House is so broke that they couldn't afford it. The bill was $400 million. They offered it to him unconditionally because they thought they were dealing with a partner, a partner for peace, a constructive partner. We were all happy for, well, many of us, we were happy for the Americans. I have plenty of American friends who voted for Trump who are disgusted today. But I was happy for them because, in a way, they wanted to take back control of their country. They wanted to stop the curse of constantly starting wars while half of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. Half of Americans, 48%, a figure I read, don't even have $500 in their account. They live paycheck to paycheck. They have to wait for the next paycheck to get by. Millions are like that in Europe. It's not normal. It shouldn't be like that. But unfortunately, it's pretty systemic, as they say. And I see that today we have Trump. He betrayed everyone. He turned against everyone. In fact, even if we have to admire the move, I mean, we don't agree, but still it's quite extraordinary that Netanyahu managed to become the 47th president of the United States. There you go. I mean, that's how it is. Trump gave him the title, the authority, and then he acts under orders. You can see it. He acts under control. He justified what he did, and he can't do it. He can't do it. He says he wanted to attack us. Well, no one has any proof that Iran wanted to attack them. Even the Pentagon says, no, we have no proof that he wanted to make the atomic bomb. We even have the UN agency saying, no, we have no proof. There have been thousands of inspections that have been carried out. No, there is no proof that he wanted to make the atomic bomb. So at this point, and even Trump and Rubio contradict each other. Not only contradict each other, they give vague explanations. Sometimes they say, yes, they hate us, they don't like us. It's as if it's normal that every country that doesn't like you, you have to bomb it. I mean, we're all someone else's bad guy. India and Pakistan don't get along, and they share a common border as well. But Iran and the United States also have issues, yet they're on opposite sides of the planet. You're lucky they're far apart. They don't help you, and that's fine. All right, they don't like you, but it's not a big deal. Let it go, just drop it. Afghanistan and Pakistan don't get along, and many African countries also have conflicts. But just because we don't like a country or they don't like us doesn't mean we're going to bomb them. And day by day, the stories keep changing. Rubio says, yes, it was Israel who dragged us in. And then the next day he says, no, it wasn't them who dragged us in. I mean, it's a complete mess. It's a mess. Alex Jones has given up. Alex Jones, whom I've been following practically since I was a teenager. I mean, Alex Jones, I think those who were awakened by Alex Jones, raise your hands. Alex Jones, yes, made a mistake about a shooting once. He didn't get away with it. But he's still someone who exposed the system. Back in the day when you wanted to find people who exposed the system, people who dug deep, people who really went into the darkest files, there was only one person on earth, and his name was Alex Jones. There was no one else. Today there are plenty. He inspired others. He woke people up. Bravo! He said, Trump, for me, it's over. And what I don't understand is that today we have people who continue to support Trump out of a cult of personality more than anything else. Because those who supported Trump based on his program, they say, well, I agree with that program. That program no longer exists. He has totally reversed his stance. So those people are saying this warrior Trump, who is provoking the whole planet, turning the whole world against us, destabilizing the world, well, that's not the Trump I voted for. That's not the program I voted for. I'm turning back. Some people belong to the cult of personality. I'm with him, and that's what matters. He wanted peace. Now he wants war. I still support him. The problem is we'll all suffer, my friends. It's not just a question of Iran or Israel or the United States. No, we're all going to suffer, my friends. You realize that what's happening right now is destabilizing the energy markets. It's going to create chaos on several levels. For example, today the Asian stock markets are collapsing. In Korea, they even had to stop trading because it dropped by 11%. They lost a fifth of the market's value in just 2 days. This will happen in Europe, it will happen in the United States. So what does that mean in practice? In practice, what does it mean for the everyday person's life? Most people won't have a drone in their kitchen or a missile in their backyard. It's not like that. But we will get layoff notices, we will get inflation, we will see major bankruptcies, we will experience waves of migrants. So people who say, yes, but the Iranians, it's unlikely that they have, Yes, but wait, about the migrants. Remember the story of Syria about the migrants? There isn't an origin label. You can have migrants who can come from anywhere on the planet, including Afghanistan, who can come from Africa, all that saying, I'm Iranian, you know. We saw that with Syria. So once again, in Europe, Europe was destabilized, let me remind you, by 3 events. Now we're at the third one. Destabilized by COVID. If we look at this decade, since 2020, 2019, 2020, well, this decade, we're already past the halfway point of the decade. Look at how we've spent it so far. COVID, we went through it. We started with COVID. We could talk about it for hours, you know. But what's certain is that we came out of it with a drained economy. There are a lot of businesses that closed and never reopened. There are many sectors that never recovered, like the restaurant industry, for example. Just when we started to breathe a little after COVID and thought it was behind us, we got into this whole situation with Russia and Ukraine and all that. And then instead of seeking peace, we looked for weapons, we blocked conversations and negotiations, and we created more and more. We tried to make the most noise. It was completely against Europe's interests, which ended up with increased unemployment, rising inflation, and total energy dependence on the United States. Germany's industries are collapsing, an industrialized country with no energy. Now they're importing LNG from the United States and paying the price, including shipping. So that's the second blow, and now there's a third blow. The third blow involves Iran, the United States, and Israel. And here, instead of Europe playing a calming role, instead of Europe being on a path that is in its interests, calls for peace, calls for dialogue, tries to call for disarmament, sends negotiators, mediators, all that, the usual things. No, we're going to send armadas, we're going to bomb as well. If they had been bombed 15 days ago, that would be respectable. They could claim they're bombing by their own choice. They're going to bomb because the Americans are going to bomb. Simply put, Israel, the Americans bomb, they go themselves too. And we realize the relationship of vassalage. There's complete vassalage. Maybe with the exception of Spain. Spain said for us, it's no. And now what's happening is that Trump is threatening them. And he says we can blockade them. He also says we can land there. Because there are bases that were offered by General Franco to Spain back when Spain was on the sidelines of the nations. Well, Franco, to get a bit of relief from the sanctions, offered air bases and ports. He offered them to the United States. Until now, they are still using them. And Trump said, and that gives you an idea of the gangster-like policy he is adopting or has already adopted. He said, yes, but we can land there, use the bases without asking their opinion. What are they going to do? That is rapist logic. He doesn't care at all about other people's opinions. That's how it is, and that's why it's very important to move towards a multipolar world. Because right now we really have this country that's completely out of control, totally out of control. Spain, well, who is against them? They have Germany against them, Merz. Merz is on the side of the United States against Spain. That gives you an idea of the European Union. We even have countries that are pro-Ukraine against Hungary and Poland, which are countries in the European Union against Slovakia. You see what I mean? It's completely crazy. And then we have Merz, of course, since we're on the Merz chapter, who says that international law should not apply to Iran. That's the German specialty. They aren't humans. We can do whatever we want. Well, maybe he still has some gas left. He might still have gas from 1939 and wants to throw it at them. You can always get rid of Nazism from Germany, but it'll be hard to get Germany out of Nazism. That's just how it is. I think the reunification of Nazi Germany was a very, very serious mistake. It's a country that should have been divided in two, maybe even 12, with an absolute ban on reunification until the end of time. Because today, we can see the damage this country is causing. Actually, it's zenith. Of course, I'm not talking about regular Germany. Like today, when I talk about Israel, the United States, France, I'm not talking about the average citizen who is just like you and me. He watches things on television, it affects his life, but in a way, he didn't choose any of it. Okay? He didn't choose. Americans, well, they chose Trump, but how did they choose Trump? They chose Trump. If you look today in the West, politics is always about two programs. The candidates come with a program for the elections. That's what they show to the public. And they have a program, well, that they keep aside, that they keep secret, that they use once they get into office, once they have control. That's it. And we see that everywhere now. We see more and more people, politicians who come with a program and then say, I'll do as I please. You know, recently someone tried to scam me on PayPal. I paid him $50 and then he disappeared. He didn't want to answer me. And what PayPal did, actually, when I complained, they refunded me. In 3 days, they refunded my $50. Why did they do that? It's for the integrity of e-commerce, so that there is trust in e-commerce. That way, next week, if I have to pay for a service with PayPal, I won't be afraid to pay. I'll go ahead and pay, knowing that if someone tries to scam me, I'm protected. Today, if we want to restore integrity and trust in the electoral system, trust in democracy, there should be sanctions. There should be consequences. I promised the public, I promised the voters a program. Normally, we have to submit it to an integrity commission. And if ever, once we come to power, we say, well, now I'll just do as I please because there's no law that forces me. The commission comes and they say, well, we're going to remove you from there. We're going to remove you from there. There are no more elections. That would help restore trust. It's a bit like when you buy something online, you know you're going to receive it, or you can file a complaint with the platform or your bank or somewhere else, and you'll get a refund. Democracy needs to be the same. That's how people will get involved, because otherwise we can't get involved. That's why today, in most countries, the largest, overwhelmingly largest party is the abstainers. These are people who decide that it's pointless. In fact, I'm one of them today. It's clear today I no longer believe, given what's happening today, I no longer believe in the democratic system. It's over, it's finished. All of that is finished. There is no solution left as far as the ballot box is concerned. Look, Trump, he destroyed the MAGA system. But because MAGA, even though it existed before him actually, but if you look at it, MAGA is really something, a movement that was going to go beyond the Democratic and Republican parties. Vance could have made it and maybe wouldn't even have needed the Republican nomination to get through. He could have just run under the MAGA label and win. That would have relegated the traditional parties really to the forgotten pages of history. What did he do? To please for a smile from Netanyahu, who has something on him, I don't know what, I have my doubts, I have my theory. While he sacrificed the MAGA movement, the Americans, who even before all this were disgusted by inflation, by unemployment, by all that, because you're not going to satisfy them, the Americans, you arrive in a country that's a tax hell with many problems, where, as I mentioned earlier, people live paycheck to paycheck. And then you're going to catch 3 Latinos, you're going to deport them with ICE in front of the cameras, and people are going to applaud. I'm going to say, okay, fine, there are people for this kind of content, but fundamentally, when it comes to feeding your family, that's not what's going to change the economic situation. So the problem is that Trump, by betraying MAGA, is pulling the rug out from under even Trump, from Vance. That means Vance will really have a hard time convincing people, will really have a hard time saying, I'm better than my boss. Yes, I was his vice president, but I'm better than him. It's very tough. The Democrats won't spare them. The Democrats are coming with wokeism, open borders, and this time I don't think they'll spare the country. Thank you, my friends, for listening up to this point. I'm sharing with you my immediate thoughts and experiences, so leave your comments, and I'll see you in the next video. See you very soon.